Okay, everybody. Welcome to our next AMA, hot on the heels of the last one. I believe this time around I did not transition you all to a black screen. So there we go. This time around we're going to talk about a little bit of things before we start the Q&A process. We're going to start with a little bit of a presentation about our initial plans coming up here for the roadmap over the next few months that Paul's going to kind of walk folks through, and then lead into the Q&A section from that. So with that, I'll let Paul kind of take it away here for a little bit.
Thanks, Jay. Hey, everybody. Paul Hainsworth here. I am new to Chia. This is, I believe, my third month, and I've joined as our VP of Product. Also here today is Bram Cohen and Gene Hoffman. Bram, of course, continues to be our executive product manager here, leading a lot of what we're doing behind the scenes from a technical perspective. And Gene is still anchoring a lot of our thinking as well on the product roadmap too. So the three of us today are going to walk you through what our plans are over the next 18 months. And with that, I'm going to share my screen and start walking through. Just bear with me a moment, please.
And as you're having questions, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A dialogue, and we will start answering those as soon as we've gone through the first presentation.
And like you said, the Q&A dialogue, just double check you put them in the Q&A link at the bottom of the webinar and not the chat one. We'll take a look at chat if we can, but it's really important they go into the Q&A one because it makes it much easier for us to go through them. I'll also try to pull stuff from the YouTube chat if stuff shows up in there as well, but definitely put them in the Q&A one if you can.
Great, so let's jump in. So part of our objective today is to share with the community, what's coming up next. But it's also an opportunity to hear directly from you in this session about some of the things we're working on and hear some of your ideas and questions that you might have for us. You can always reach out with ideas and questions to me directly on KeyBase. My KeyBase with Chia is Paul Hainsworth. And you can also tweet me on Twitter at Mouthy. So let's dive in. We've got really kind of three swim lanes here: our core blockchain team, applications, which includes coins and wallets and stuff like that. And then we have a growing swim lane for developers that we'll see much more evolution on in the next couple of months. We're going to spend about 10 minutes today just giving you a summary of what's happening in the second half of this year, which is really where we've got the greatest visibility about what we're up to. And then we'll spend about 5 or 10 minutes on what's happening next year. So let's start in the top left with core blockchain. We've got two major activities happening in the second half of this year. Layer 2 R&D work, as well as full node and wallet performance. So I'll talk for just a second about the performance stuff. When we talk about that, really it's a lot of technical debt from doing mainnet and then launching our pool protocol. And that technical debt is really focused heavily on security and optimizing things to make our performance a little faster. The layer 2 R&D work relates to mostly work that Bram and team are going to be pulling together. We have some interesting stuff coming up for that, including kind of a brain trust session happening in November. Bram, I'm wondering if you could maybe share with the community a little bit about what that R&D exercise looks like, and then how you see things playing out in layer 2. Oh, I think you're on mute, Bram.
Yeah, right now we're very focused on doing things like building our asset token standard and figuring out like AMMs, things like that. For layer 2 being mostly payment channels, interesting question even what the scope of that is. The first step is going to be just taking what people have built in payment channels in Bitcoin already and figuring out how we're going to get that ported over and in what ways we might want to make something that's more featureful than that right off the bat, or maybe architected in a slightly different way. Basically, anything that is being implemented in Bitcoin is not difficult to do in Chia, and just from a raw engineering exercise, other than the translation work across, because Chia easily supports everything that Bitcoin does and more. So, but we need to make a plan of exactly how we're going to approach things, because it's building payment channels requires not just building a few pieces of software for direct counterparties to talk to each other, but you kind of need a whole ecosystem to be working. So the size of a minimum viable product is pretty big. So our ambition is to do something more than just what's being built in Bitcoin, but a lot of work to get that up and running.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Bran. Let's move on to the next box in applications for the second half of this year. The top priority for our team right now is this program called CATS, which is the new name for Chia colored coins. CATS are Chia asset tokens. You'll learn more about that soon. But this is essentially defining a standard for our tokens that are issued on the Chia blockchain, similar as from an analogy point of view to an ERC20 token. So this is a standard that we'll publish and share out shortly to the community, and it will help asset issuers to issue tokens that can be discoverable in wallets, easily listed on exchanges without additional technical work, that kind of stuff. So that is a major priority for the team right now. Some other stuff that's coming are a number of wallet features. We are soon to be releasing a new wallet in our client software that will include a new Electrum protocol. And then we're going to, as a next stage from that, carve off the wallet so that we have a standalone light wallet in addition to the wallet that's bundled with our full node farmer, harvester, plotter software.
Yeah, it's an Electrum style protocol, and it's not literally Electrum. And I should clarify what that means, because in Electrum, you generally speak to a trusted server. This isn't actually going to require that you speak to a trusted server. Your light wallet will be able to talk to any full node and speak this protocol, but it will be Electrum style in the sense of you just tell the server exactly what you're interested in, and it tells you what, if anything, has happened with those.
Great, that's a really good point, Bran. In addition to the new Electrum style wallet protocol coming in our current client software and the standalone light wallet, we're also exploring a release of a Chrome extension wallet that would be kind of similar to MadMax in a way. And then we have a number of wallet type features that will be coming out in the second half of this year. One is a rate limited wallet, so that you can specify a maximum amount of Chia or CATs that can be sent from your wallet on a limited amount, so that if your wallet was compromised, for example, there is a limit on, say, a daily basis for how much of your money can disappear. We are also going to be rolling out multi-sig capabilities so that you can have multiple cosigners in transactions for a wallet, something that's really important to our coin custody solution. We have another capability called clawback that enables you to recall funds from your wallet if they're sent, again, in the event of a compromise. We also have watch-only wallets coming and authorized payee capabilities coming too. So lots and lots of wallet capabilities that we're focused on bringing to market. In addition to that, we are also going to be rolling out our DID wallet, which is something that we've been working on for some time. And very soon we'll be rolling out that DID capability. This will be really useful for some enterprise use cases in particular that we're looking at, that, for example, would be would make it possible for you to specify that an asset can only be sent to wallets that are authorized through this DID, or wallets can only spend to other wallets that are also in this DID group. So those are some of the DID capabilities that we're rolling out soon. I'll pause there. And Gene or Bram, was there anything you wanted to add around wallets and DID before we move on?
Not unless you were planning on talking about custody more specifically later. Otherwise, we definitely want to chat about that. Right.
Yeah. So that is next. Coin custody is the next kind of fast follow for us, and you'll hear more about that soon. We will be moving our pre-farm from its current location to a new internal custody solution. And the custody solution is something that we're designing so that it can be open sourced, made available to the community, and we invite the rest of the community to start using it as well. Some of the capabilities in Coin Custody v1 that we'll be rolling out this year include multi-sig capability, so that we have M of N cosigners for sending transactions out of our pre-farm. We also will include a clawback capability, so that if we need to hit a panic button, Bram can pull back all the money. And we'll also be endeavoring to deliver a time lock capability, so that we can say there's a 90-day time lock on transactions from the pre-farm. We can announce that it's coming. And when we send the funds, they are locked for 90 days until that lock expires. So that's a really important part of how we're going to be managing our pre-farm. Gene, anything that you wanted to add there?
A couple things. One is not all of the pre-farm will be put in this, because obviously we kind of have hot, cold, and warm wallets. The hot wallet obviously is where we're going to lend and do other kind of day-to-day things with the pre-farm. The other thing is we'll likely announce a window in which we will make this move. We intentionally will not tell you exactly when for various security reasons, and we ourselves may not know exactly when. We may be rolling dice, just to give you a sense of what we're trying to do there. But we hope to give a couple weeks notice that it'd be between, say, day 1 and day 3 that we'd make this transition. And then obviously once it was complete and confirmed, we'll post something about it being complete, and hopefully pointing you to the ability to go download the entire custody kit we're using. Obviously not the specific keys, but you can see those on chain. So
great. While I've got you, Gene, do you mind chatting a bit about the next topic, which is pool monitoring?
Yep. So, as we've seen, not all pools are as trustworthy as we'd all like them to potentially be. Ultimately, when we talk about one-click farming later, we're going to need to be able to have some objective standards for what we feel comfortable putting into the simplified farming interface. We want to have a list of pools that we have some standards for. We, in some cases, want to be able to let people randomly choose a pool there in the UI, and certainly we're likely to randomize how they're presented. It's going to be depending on farmers, how sophisticated they are, if they want to choose their own pool versus if they want to just hit a button and go, yeah, I want to be in a pool, choose one for me. So we're going to implement some central monitoring of the payout addresses and kind of compare that with what pools are saying over time, so that we have some sense of which pools are accurate and trustworthy.
Great. Thanks, Gene. I want to talk next about two codenamed projects that are on our roadmap, Asteroids and Atari. But first, to clarify our naming conventions for internal codename projects, we are using an alphabetical order, A, B, C, D, E, and using classic video games as the naming convention. So our first confidential project or codename project is Asteroids. Asteroids is a customer-specific project that we're working on that will include many capabilities that I've just mentioned earlier. It will be a CAT issuance that requires our standard to be documented and developed. It will be an asset token that a major customer is going to be issuing. It's also going to require a standalone wallet and some other goodies that are coming. We aren't in a position yet to release the name of the customer, but we do expect to be able to share that soon, certainly in the second half of this year. So that's Asteroids. Adjacent to Asteroids is also a new project called Atari, which is also for a large enterprise customer. And Atari is a new capability that we are adding to the Chia blockchain. Gene, do you want to speak for a moment about Atari and its scope?
Yes, so there's been in the enterprise blockchain space a lot of, I think, bad implementation where people are wanting to put large data sets on chain. Obviously, that is not the place we want to go. And instead, what we want to do is make it so it's relatively easy so you can federate a group of databases for a specific application where the data is living off chain. It's generally in those databases, but it's both authentication and authenticated changes are being replicated to chain in very small pieces in a way that is high trust, but doesn't require trust between the various database operators. A lot of different kind of enterprise and NGO types of applications very much have this need to, bring the PDF of the terms of service, or bring photos or bring GIS maps along, and certainly you wouldn't want to have that actually on chain. So this is a data layer to be able to keep those databases in sync, know that they're accurate, know that the items are there or not there with proofs of inclusion or exclusion. Pretty neat stuff to be able to use directly on chain to keep those things in sync.
Yeah, super excited to see Atari come to market. I promised 10 minutes for this column, and here we are 8 minutes over. So I'll just finish off with a piece about our developer work that we're doing in the second half of this year. We are going through some optimization work for our compiler that will make it faster to compile Chia-Lisp code. That's a big improvement that we think will help developers as they build. We've taken some of the feedback that we've received from the current hackathon that is underway, and are implementing some of the feedback from that. We also have, I would say, a general bucket called developer tools. I don't want to steal the thunder of Paul Ford, our new VP of Developer Relations. This will be a much larger conversation, hopefully in an upcoming AMA. So I don't want to go into too much depth about that just yet. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming in 2022. There's a few things on here. We have second versions of many of the things here. Coin custody will have a second version with some additional capabilities, similar to DID, as well as with Atari, and expecting that we'll start to roll out some of Atari in the early part of next year and continue to iterate on a roadmap for that. One of the areas where I'm hoping, Bram, we could spend a couple of minutes is to share your thoughts on AMM and what we might do in that space next year.
Yeah. So we do have support for AMMs. We have support for very good AMMs that if you do an AMM on Chia, not only can it support any business logic you want about any pairs or more in the thing, but it can be that when you have deposits on the AMM, rather than the AMM kind of having its own account system where it remembers deposits, it has its own internal use cat, and you get tokens. You just directly trade your Chia for the tokens in the cat, and then you can custody that in your wallet directly and trade those with other people as well, and then redeem them from the AMM. And also there are some pretty nice defenses against miner extracted value, because in like Ethereum, everything happens sequentially. So a miner who's trying to pull as much value out as they want can, order the transactions so they drive the price all the way up and then all the way back down and then back up again. Where they're kind of taking full advantage of the high and low prices, where in Chia, everything that happens in a block happens simultaneously. So the AMM will be able to, so the whoever is farming the block, if they're trying to do any value extraction, can manipulate the price to be high or low, but not both, and can't liquidate from the AMM in the same block as they're doing that. So not 100% limitations on price manipulation. There's no such thing as 100% removal of price manipulations. There's always some friction in markets, but that's definitely some nice restrictions on potential MEV.
Great, thanks, Bram. I'm super stoked to see the ecosystem bring AMMs to market. And I would clarify that, it isn't Chia's intention to become the Chia AMM. We will, provide guidance to the community, likely provide reference code, but it isn't our intention to be our own AMM by ourselves.
Same kind of guidance as we've done for pooling protocol.
Yeah, exactly. I also wanted to mention, while we're in this applications quadrant for first half of next year, enterprise CAD issuance tool. So I mentioned with Project Asteroids, a major customer that will be issuing assets in the first half of the year. There will be a mature tool that these types of enterprise customers can use for multiple issuances of their CADs. They're going to need tools like that and that kind of enterprise sophistication. Gene, can I call on you to talk a little bit about our Time Lord specific ASIC?
Absolutely. We will be talking about this more particularly very shortly, but we are partnering with Supranational to build hardware here and get pretty close to the bleeding edge of the top speed that a VDF can be completed in. It's our goal to keep that open source so other people could also go to the fab and generate it. But more importantly, to make them available generally, it may be somewhere between 250 and 500, even if we're losing money on them. We kind of don't care. We want to make sure that you have an ability to grab one of these, run it yourself if you want to. Obviously, we'll be running some too, but we want to make it something that everybody can do. And the neat part about it is we do it right. Your Raspberry Pi can be a Time Lord because it'll just plug into it. Might have a little more requirements than that because you may have to generate the proof of time still on the machine, but anything that could blue box would be able to be a real Time Lord in this environment.
Great, thanks, Gene. Let's talk for a moment about one-click farming. So you've seen that we released the pooling protocol, and then we've really turned our attention to building out a number of capabilities for customers, and that's a lot of wallet stuff and CATS work, DID. I want to be clear that we are still focused in the background here on improvements for our farmer community. One of the major initiatives that we plan to release next year is this concept of one-click farming. The idea is to make it trivially easy for anybody to start farming Chia. And to do that, we want to eliminate almost all of the technical sophistication that our farming community needs today in order to be effective farmers. And that includes things like, you download a client, you click a button, it automatically randomly chooses a pool for you to choose, and you automatically start farming. As space fills up in your drive, it stops plotting more. When space frees up in your drive, it plots a little more in the background. So we really want to make this very simple. And the kind of higher order goal here is we want to increase the number of our full nodes and reachable nodes by really in order of magnitude over the next year. Chia is already one of, if not the most decentralized blockchain out there. We have several 100,000 full nodes, and increasing that by an order of magnitude is a way of also increasing the security of the network by making it further decentralized. Anything to add on to that, Gene?
No, I think we should just go ahead and take some questions.
Great. Let's do it.
Jay, I think you're playing MC.
Yep. So I got a bunch of questions coming in here already. Let me switch this here back over. Let me just manually kill your there. There we go. Got a bunch coming in. I'm gonna kind of jump around here, grab some of the quick and easy ones here first, so we can kind of lump together more complicated ones that kind of relate to each other. So if I answer your questions out of order from how you've been sending them in, don't worry if you asked one way at the beginning that I haven't gotten to in a minute. First up, this one comes up every time. Let's just get it out of the way, and hopefully it won't come up again in the future today. But it'll probably come up next time. And that is someone asked, I'm a longtime farmer, Chia. I really support the project, but I am concerned about the huge amount of pre-farm. How can you convince the community that you're trustworthy? Because saying we won't use it is nothing more than a statement. We've talked about this a lot in the past, that there's a lot more behind we won't use it than just words. There's legal ramifications as well, but I'll let Gene, if you want to dive into that a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's three big things. Thing number one is to keep Chia from ever being a security, we have never sold it. We will not sell it until we have an effective filing with the SEC. It is the only way that it could become saleable. We have said that we might lend some of it. It's going to be a very small amount of the total. Something like 80% will be locked up. And that's the second point, which is, but for really good problems to have, like these major projects that need things delivered ASAP, we will be moving these into Chia-Lisp enforced time locks. So when we say to you in the white paper that we would not make a change to our policies without 90 days of notice, it would literally take us 90 days to unlock the coins to make that change. So if we ever were to make that change, we would announce it and then start the 90-day timer on those coins. So very soon, the vast majority of all those coins will be locked up that way. But the key point is that it would be to shoot ourselves in the foot and completely and totally devalue Chia to do anything with it before we had an effective registration statement with the SEC.
Cool. Another one we got here is going back to some of our code names that we talked about. Can we say if the Asteroids customer is paying us for the work that we're doing, or is it more of a trading their work for our work kind of thing as a reference customer for deliverables, or can we just not talk about that at all?
So I can give a slight answer here, and basically there's kind of two separate issues. When everyone finds out what this is, you'll understand why I'd say that it's an ecosystem opportunity. And so it's not necessarily that we're going to charge the customer for this particular piece of it. It does mean that there may be additional customers that are unlocked by doing it. And I will say we will have a positive financial outcome with this. It's not necessarily that it's going to be revenue, but there are other ways we're going to be participating that are pretty positive. Right this second, I think I've said this in the last AMA, Misha points out, he's like, look, an additional $1 in revenue right now is worth about $9 in enterprise value. But an additional $1 in coin price is worth about $15 million in enterprise value. So right this second, we are choosing to not optimize revenue first. However, we are going through the process internally of creating statements of work, really understanding what we would have charged to make sure people understand what's going on. But you'll also see that there's this kind of natural pull in enterprise software that as these projects roll out, the various actual customers that use it day to day will want our support and will want us to charge them because they want to know that we've got the professional services team that can be reached out to when they have a problem trying to get some of this stuff to work.
All right. And then kind of following up on that, can we say how large the customer for Asteroids or Atari is?
Well, no. Very large.
Sounds about right. Sounds
That's
about
for
right.
it to be worth it for us to put half our engineering on making it happen.
Yeah. Now, the nice part is what we're doing is stuff that we wanted to do on the roadmap no matter what. So we're actually kind of rushing to get some things done that, are going to be great for everybody. They just happen to be a particularly well-suited initial blockchain application.
Yeah, and I would just add that it's a huge advantage to be designing and building products with a customer, as opposed to build it and hope that they come. So that's a big advantage to what we're doing here.
All right. And continuing the theme of partners, have there been any potential developments for us regarding any major Gamefy partnerships? And the person asking this says, they're happy with a vague answer. They're just curious, is anything we can provide at all?
Well, certainly one of our new employees, Efficient, is in that category, and quite a few of our employees are from the game world, so conversations happening. Also, missing and accidentally missing is our NFT standard for first half of next year. That'll be making it onto that slide very shortly. It should have been on there today. Our apologies. So.
Alrighty. Moving over to something more technical, I got two questions here that kind of go together. I'll ask together in one about plots. The first one is, are there any plans on reducing the size of plots? And of course, the answer to that is yes. And that's going to lead into the next question that we'll actually elaborate on that a bit more. And this person's asking, um, can we talk about the plot compression that we've teased in KeyBase previously, which I believe Jeannie said was about 3%, and MadMax compatibility? Will it work with plots that were created outside of our plotter like MadMax? And also, will this compression utility, when we run it on existing plots, will it be CPU intensive or RAM intensive or disk write intensive or everything, or what combination of that?
Okay, I can answer most of that. So first off, we're not supporting smaller K values. This is just existing plots, but a little bit smaller. We're not making the trade-off of allowing actually smaller granularity of plot sizes. Doing the optimizations is well underway. It's interesting. We're kind of, if you go down the list in for our plotting competition that we had, we made a document available that gave a list of optimizations that we thought could be done. We're now doing a bunch of those plus a few others that we figured out since, to the point where we're sort of running out of things to do, with a major asterisk that there are two big potential compressions remaining, although those require a lot more work, like real engineering work, and dramatically increased plotting time for both of them. So that's why we're not doing those yet. So those, I want to tell everyone so people don't act blindsided when this eventually actually happens. So the improvements we're putting in now are somewhere in the neighborhood, combined total of around 3%, maybe, what they're getting in terms of compression. Maybe less than that. The other ones, there's implementing Hellman attacks, can maybe get around 10%, possibly. It's a little fuzzy what the theoretical limits of those are, but let's say 10%. And then there's doing inlining, which could get around maybe 2.5% at the theoretical limit, which I believe is a pretty hard theoretical limit for that one. So just FYI, everybody, so people don't act all freaked out when that eventually happens. Those things will happen eventually. We're not working on them right now. We're doing simpler things. For converting, yes, converting will work on plots generated by anything, as long as it's a valid plot file. Converting to the compressed thing will work. I'm not sure how many passes over the data you need to do the conversion. My guess would be maybe 2 or 3 most likely, but I really don't know. So much less write work, very little CPU work, almost no CPU work, much less write work than plotting the thing, but more than a single pass of reading and writing out the data again, more than copying the file.
Cool.
I just want to add in, just to clarify for anybody who has any question about this, that this new plot compression does not require you to replot. Your current plots are not obsoleted. You don't need to replot, just in case somebody is thinking about that.
Yeah, you don't need to replot. You don't need to convert. Your old stuff keeps working. If you convert, right, they'll be smaller than they are right now. Yeah. You might decide that's not worth it to you. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
And depending how big your hard drive is, even if you can converted everything you have on the drive, you might not even have room for an extra plot, depending on your drive size, unless you have larger size drives. So you're not,
Yeah, I put in all these caveats because it seems like every time anyone who doesn't work at Chia makes any improvement in anything, people make the claim that this shows that we're a bunch of incompetent bozos. I'd like to say there are many competent people in the world. We want a whole ecosystem of people building all kinds of things. We've done a lot of improvements in things that I'm very proud of, but we do not do every single possible optimization of everything there could ever be.
Yeah, and that actually brings us to the MadMax question, which is The answer is that MadMax can adopt it. Some of the strategies MadMax uses to speed up may be complicated in adopting it, but that's more of a MadMax question about how that's going to work once he's had a chance to see the changes we're making.
Yeah, the changes we're making right now, probably not too bad. For that, the other changes I alluded to are going to be way more of a pain for everyone.
All right, great. Next up, switching gears a little bit. What is the difference between the Chia cats that we talked about earlier and Bitcoin's Omni layer?
Yeah, so Omni requires and has these very, very complicated rules about what's allowed, that you could play if there are like multiple implementations of Omni protocol and you want to play games where one thing will accept and other things won't. In principle, if everything is implemented perfectly, you shouldn't be able to get something to accept a coin and another not, but it's entirely possible that that could be done if there's the slightest hint of a bug. And more to the point, you need an actual like full node to say whether something is an Omni coin as opposed to just a vanilla Bitcoin or a melted, bricked Omni coin that's been screwed up in some way. This is different from like ERC20 tokens, where you can, in fact, you do know when you're talking to an ERC20 token, but it doesn't look like vanilla Ethereum. It doesn't look like an individual account. It looks like an account that's being kept track of by this thing that's not like a regular Ethereum account. So our CAT standard kind of has the benefits of both, that the coins are real coins and that you can validate that they're real coins. Not only can you validate that they're coins, but things on chain can validate real coins, which enables us to have offers and AMMs and all kinds of smart functionality that is difficult to impossible to do with Omni protocol and Bitcoin.
Cool. In both YouTube and the Q&A thing, this question was asked. This is kind of a question for Gene. In the early Q&As, way back in the old days, Gene, you mentioned there would be something special potentially offered for the earliest Chia farmers. Is that still something that we're considering?
Yeah, first of all, I need to caveat it, as I did in the previous times, that this is something we hope to do. We cannot guarantee we can do it. It takes more than us to sign off on it. What we're hoping to do is to allow anyone who has farmed Chia early, and early will be a definition that Bram and I on the board will have a conversation about, would have an allocation of the IPO offering to be bought at the IPO price. So you'd basically have the opportunity to sign with the same farmer key that you won a farming reward in a certain period, and that signature would authenticate you to be a person who can open an account with our underwriter and buy equity in the offering at the offering price.
Cool.
Right. Now, again, requires our underwriter to agree, requires the SEC to sign off, so I cannot guarantee this in any way. But we are very seriously wanting to be able to do that for early farmer folks.
There's a long road between what we would like to provide and what we're actually able to, and we actually have to try to do it. So. Moving to some current events news, with the recent issues on Solara for the IDO offering of Radium Grapes dApp toolkit and its failure to scale for those transactions, can we talk about how Chia can avoid or sidestep any issues from heavy bot trading on initial offers?
Yes, yes, we can. We have a transaction rate limit, which we are being honest about. We're not making any ridiculous claims that we're going to support infinity on-chain scaling. Some other projects who seemed to have lots of resources, like Ethereum, made that claim and dug themselves into a massive hole that they're stuck in now, trying to do that without even winding up at a terribly high transaction rate. So just FYI to everyone, depending on how you define a standard vanilla transaction, but sticking to somewhat justifiable definitions of that and reasonable metrics. Bitcoin supports about 5 transactions per second. Ethereum supports about 10. We support about 20. The ratio probably looks a lot better when you get into smart coin functionality, but that's where we're at. We're not going above that. That's what you're getting. It's a bit better if you batch things and stuff, but that's kind of that gives you an idea of what the capacity of our blockchain is, and we're sticking with that because it's very important that you be able to run a full node on totally normal hardware and have it just chug along, no problem. We're also working on improving our implementation of our full node software and doing other things for that. But so we're just being honest about what our transaction rate is. And in terms of how we keep people from just spamming things, we have a transaction fee market like Bitcoin does. That when there's excess demands for space on the blockchain for transactions, those who offer higher fees get there first. Them's the rules. That's how it works.
And kind of following on that, there was a question further down here, I think, about fees. It was basically asking, when will transaction fees be required, which we kind of talked about last week. It's basically when the blocks become full and you have to fight for space. I'll let you kind of elaborate on more of that if you want to.
Yeah, we're likely to see cycles, like daily and weekly cycles, like you see in Bitcoin, where you have fee pressure during the day and then nothing overnight, and nothing all weekend, and nothing during whole holidays. That's just sort of what we expect to see happen. And there will, in general, be these trade-offs where the more patient you are, the lower your fees are. So there will likely be some point in the future in which you won't be able to get 0 fees even if you wait overnight. But there will likely be a long time, if history is any guide, of that being a thing. And even if you want your transactions to go through during the day, it's going to be much more expensive to get something in if you really want it in the next 10 minutes than if you really wanted it in the next hour. You could just, you have a much higher chance of getting something in at the next hour with a lower fee than in the next minute or two.
Okay. We teased a little bit about the custody solution that we're working on for both our use and other uses. Is that something that can help exchanges perhaps their own cold wallets, or is this more of a reference implementation we're doing for enterprise customers?
We're going to be dogfooding our custody solution, our own internal custody solution. So it's not just a reference implementation, it's a real implementation. We're going to be building it with the intention of people will actually be able to audit that it has the technical controls we're claiming it does, and B, that other institutions will be able to use it as well, because we're building some features that we think will be useful for them.
Okay.
I would add, I'd expect anybody who needs cold storage will want to use this solution, and that I think will include exchanges.
Yeah, and especially version 2 of the solution, there's some pieces that, for example, P2P trading and escrow are going to be easier to do. And I do actually expect some of the exchanges to use core Chia blockchain capabilities to potentially even help manage things like wrapped Ethereum, other things like that.
It'll also be possible to mix and match this technical solution we're building with key custody solutions. There are these trusted third parties who will hold onto your keys for you with defined procedures, defined meet space procedures around those. And you can totally use those with the extra types of constraints and business logic in our custody solution, because there do need to be keys somewhere. We're going to be doing our own sitting on the keys mostly. Haven't fully decided on all of that yet. But anyone who is a provider of key physical custody solutions, we very much welcome to use and participate in our the kind of business logic enforcement of our custody solution.
Okay. Talking a bit more about the AMM stuff we talked about earlier, and off the conversation about transactions being fees when there's a lot versus not a lot now. Earlier when Bram described posting partial transactions for offering a coin for trade, or where someone else completes a transaction by minting the other token and solving that, or perhaps being done by AMMs, wouldn't that just result in a constant spam of unfulfilled and expired transactions as people post and wait and post and wait?
I'm not sure. I don't really understand the question.
I think the questioner was thinking that we'd be publishing the partial offers on chain, which
Correct.
is not generally how it's going.
Oh, no. Yeah. So our mempool won't propagate partial offers. If you want a partial offer to get fulfilled, there will have to be some kind of marketplace, which might be very over the counter, but some kind of marketplace. I mean, the way offers work, it could be a 4chan board, but there needs to be some kind of marketplace where those things are published and met with each other. The mempool won't be supporting them.
Okay. Pulling some questions from a few other places to give folks a little chance there who couldn't make the Zoom call. From our KeyBase, would layer 2 smart coin features decrease the transparency of the blockchain? Thinking about high frequency trade setting off chain, thereby losing information on the participants of the trade.
Yes. You get this interesting thing if you get into like snarks. Snarks have amazing privacy features, but they also have amazing compression features. This tends naturally to go hand in hand. If you throw out if you make something vastly smaller, you've hidden away most of the information because you couldn't leak all the information because you're not providing enough bits. The converse of this also happens a lot, that privacy solutions do tend to compress things a lot, which is kind of cool. And you can get the compression without the privacy. But this also just happens in purely information theoretic ways when you're not using snarks, that if you have a payment channel network, it provides some implicit anonymity and privacy in addition to adding extra scaling because it's moving stuff off chain. Now, general rule of thumb is about privacy is when data is kind of accidentally being thrown out with no particular rhyme or reason, just as a scaling solution, what you should usually expect is that unless you're trying really hard, you're probably throwing out all the data you're going to want back later and not throwing out data that you are going to wish you had thrown out later. You should make those assumptions when you're engineering for scaling, not for privacy.
Okay. There's a couple that kind of go together here. I'm going to try to loop together in one thing. The first question was, does Chia have a cross-chain plan? Will it open up the circulation of assets on other chains in the future? And kind of in a similar vein to that, there was the question of, do we have a roadmap that will be creating any bridges? And if so, what other blockchains will we be bridging to? If a token price is a property for enterprise value, then likely a top priority would probably be for us to create bridges to other networks, which is why they're asking.
Yeah. Okay, there's a few layers of answer to this. There's a few ways of bridging between things. The simplest answer is our cross-chain solution is secure hash pre-image reveals. There's a lot of things you can do atomically using SHA-256 pre-image reveals. Someone has at least prototyped up a Chia to Ethereum exchange with that. That can work great for a lot of things. People should use it more. Expanding on that, if you're doing bridges between things, there's a lot of caveats about doing it well. But you can make a bridge between things that's just federate that's just trusted, right? So like all stablecoins have some element of this, where there's some issuer of the stablecoin who you're just trusting because of traditional financial industry type auditing solutions or not, to actually have the dollars or whatever it is on hand that they're saying that they have on chain. So you can do the same thing with like wrapping Ethereum on Chia or wrapping Chia on Ethereum. Let's just trust someone. The downside being you have to trust them. Then you can get into, if you're getting fancy, you can get into other solutions where there's actual like reporting of what the state of the other chain is going back and forth with things moving. So if you want to move stuff from one chain to another, you kind of like move it into a smart coin on one side, and then on the other side it goes, oh, new stuff came into the smart coin, and so I'm making these tokens to represent that, and then you can pull back again and then have those released back out of the smart coin where they were stuck by the bridge. Depending on how fancy you get, kind of the right way of doing that is that there's some way of each chain knowing what the state of the other chain is, or some part of the state of the other chain. The simplest way of doing it is there's a trusted oracle that reports what the state of this smart coin is on the other chain. That obviously has the security problem that you need to trust that oracle. That can be made a multi-sig of whatever, what have you, and that oracle would have to be engaged in a pretty gnarly conspiracy that was pretty directed in order to screw people over. But there is, in some sense, a trivial attack on that one. If you want to get really fancy, so all that stuff I just said doesn't require any new on-chain tech. If you want to get really fancy, you get into technologies where one thing can prove something along the lines of like this, there is a state of the other, I have a like a state of the Chia chain or state of the Ethereum chain which has this weight, where this thing has this state on it. This coin exists, or this account has this state. And do a snark style proof of that weight and that state. This enables completely untrusted two-way bridges, which is awesome, but requires a lot of machinery. I think I'm not entirely sure whether the current stuff we have in Chia could support this in principle. I think probably not, but maybe a soft fork that had not too many extensions, if you were willing to use BLS pairing operations to design your snark, would be able to make these things not horribly expensive, with the caveat that it would take some time for transactions for value to be able to be ported back from a side chain, or anything else that this was being pulled onto.
Mars chain.
Mm-hmm.
Mars chain.
Yeah, we're going to be keeping an eye on this. It is something I find really interesting. When the technology settles down a little bit more than it has, we will seriously consider adding in functionality to CLVM in a soft fork to enable that type of functionality.
So, and to go back to the question and get some of the more details, there's already atomic swaps to Ethereum. There is wrapped Chia on Ethereum. And we fully expect that the ecosystem will be providing a stable coin that's US dollar denominated, at least one, a wrapped Bitcoin, and a wrapped Ethereum in the next few months.
Yeah, so we have about 5 minutes left, and that kind of have to answer one next one I'll lead into. I'm going to hit a couple quick questions that hopefully we can give some just really quick, succinct answers to kind of knock out a few of these here that are pretty straightforward that I kind of held on to because it'll be easier for rapid fire. One of those is, having a CAT standard for a stablecoin is probably important. It's been shown that stablecoins are a major milestone for other smart contract competitors? Do we have anything to say about stablecoins? And Gene just kind of touched on that. We have been approached by some, and we have been speaking to others, and we are working with folks to help them understand how to do it. Part of that is part and parcel with our work on getting the CATS standard kind of defined so that people can build things like that. Are we ever going to support data storage?
Indirectly. So, this is what we were talking about earlier. If you came in late, probably worth restreaming from the top. We're going to have the ability to federate databases and kind of confirm it on chain. The data on chain is not the data itself, and that's key. You do not want to put large data sets anywhere near a blockchain. But being able to build an application that moves data independently and verifies its existence or non-existence from a singleton, for example, is absolutely something we're going to support.
Okay. This one's Gene's favorite topic to come up often. What's the number of Chia full nodes in comparison to Bitcoin's full nodes?
Sure. So Bitcoin's peak, it got to about 220,000 full nodes. It's currently hovering around 65,000. At our peak, we hit about 750,000, and we're currently hovering somewhere in the 325 to 400,000 nodes, depending on the phase of the moon's impact on the crawler.
Alrighty. Next up, we got will the Light wallet that we're working on use any of the work done exposing Chia features in JavaScript, which is currently an external project that a lot of the community has been using?
It probably won't directly use the JavaScript tools that are available, but part of the roadmap there was to get everything WASMable anyway. So we want other people in the environment to be able to run every single piece except for like plotting in the web browser.
Yeah, our long term, we think it's very important for wallets to be able to support somewhat bespoke functionality for all kinds of specialized smart wallets within a more general wallet, and for those UXs to be at least reasonably sandboxed within it. And the obvious way of implementing that is in JavaScript.
All right. Assuming conferences do come back in 2022, do we have any plans to attend conferences, either not just crypto ones, but other things like maybe storage events and tech conferences?
Well, the answer is yes. We're actually going to go to the Masari conference in New York next week. It'll be just myself on the East Coast, but that's actually coming off, unfortunately, with a vaccine mandate, but that's not so bad, actually. We will be starting to attend things like there's a major storage event in November. Also, some of the climate events are other things we're going to see us at. So.
And a slightly non-technical one, but it kind of is technical at the same time. If we can answer this one quick and easy, is it correct that smart contracts on the blockchain are tradable themselves? Is that not part of the idea behind everything as a coin and kind of plays into that?
The answer is yes. Everything is a smart contract, basically.
Yeah.
Even the vanilla transaction is a Chia transaction.
Yeah. Actually, the vanilla transaction supports Taproot and Graftroot. It's not that simple. I mean, you can make even simpler transactions than that, but in like Ethereum, to have like kind of any smart anything, you have to set up a contract, which is pretty expensive. Where in Chia, it's pretty lightweight. Every single coin can be pretty smart. And also you can have things that have very, very big, complicated functionality that's delegated away, where they say, well, if you want to do like 99% of the time you're in this bit of logic, but once in a while you might want to do something else. So here's the hash of that bit of logic. So if you want to do that, just hand me this bit of code and I'll call it. So very good for compression that way.
And I want to end on one that's a little bit because I do think it's kind of topically relevant. This is a good one for Gene. The SEC chair, Gary Gensler, and Congress seem to be working on a lot of cryptocurrency regulation currently. And is there any insight on how those regulations might impact Chia? Do we care?
So we absolutely care. I would say that the most of everything that's being talked about right now has very little impact on Chia Network or the core chain, but it has significant impact on the ecosystem and the types of applications that we want to see built. We are actively engaging in Capitol Hill, Albany, and Sacramento, and these are the three major places that matter here. We were a little troubled that we were the only people who showed up in Albany to keep the Bitcoin mining ban bill from moving forward. And having done this process before at eMusic to keep the Recording Industry Association from, shooting itself in the foot, we have some expertise in how to handle Capitol Hill, how to build friends and win influence there. And we've accelerated our plans there. We are actively there. In fact, I will be in DC after the Masari event next week. So, we're going to actively be educating. We don't want to see Senator Warren ever try to enshrine proof of work again. That was one of those, can you believe that story? And we want to make sure that, one place we agree with Gary Gensler is that when you're decentralized in name only, you might very well be a regulated entity that needs to be registered with the Chicago Board or with the SEC. But when you're doing AMM and decentralized DeFi and DEX correctly, it's all about custody. If there's no custody of your funds on the other side, then it should not be in scope for most all of these regulations. And we're going to be spending a lot of time educating and hopefully, keeping the status quo, because actually the current status quo regulatory environment is pretty good, actually.
Alrighty. There are several questions that unfortunately we didn't have time to get to today. I do want to say though, if you have a question that is not in the answered column, if you look in Q&A, you can actually see everything we've answered. It'll say if we answered it live, or if maybe for some of you I typed really succinct text answers because it wasn't really going to fit the flow of this call. It was a very simple thing to answer. If you have a question that we didn't answer, I'm going to follow up here in a few minutes after we kind of stop this, and I'm going to mash out a couple text answers for some of you folks. So hang out in the chat here for a little bit longer, and you might actually get an answer to your question as I go through some of these as I can. So I will try to catch up to some of you that we couldn't get to. Aside from that, thanks guys for doing this AMA today. Thanks to everyone else for being here and asking questions as always. For those of you watching the VOD, we also recommend that if there's a lot of new stuff to you, check some of the older ones as well. There's some great AMA questions and stuff in there as well. And we'll probably do another one of these in about 2 to 3 weeks. We try to stick roughly to a 2 to 3 week cadence on these. This one was a bit different because of timing and scheduling and stuff, but there'll be another one of these in a few weeks. So yeah. Anything else you guys want to part with?
Yeah, I want to make sure that we set off one question, which is, yes, we will be posting the roadmap slide probably on the product tab of GitHub.
Yes, it will. It will be going up after all this. You guys can keep referencing it along with the other stuff that we have linked. Oh, actually, the ending question for this we will go with. Bram, did you part with the nice Louis XV style purple sofa? What happened to it?
Yeah, that was actually not my sofa. That was my former landlord's sofa. I moved. But and that was it required sufficient maintenance that I didn't want to take custody